The following episode of TOFOP is rated MA for mature audiences. It may contain sexual references, time travel references, allegations of bin misconduct, and mild coarse language. TOFOP advises that this episode is not suitable for anyone under the age of 15 or anyone who thinks a comedy conversation between two old mates sounds like a terrible idea for a show. Minors must be accompanied by a parent or guardian. This is John Deek speaking.
Everyone relax, this is TOFOP. I'm Charlie Clausen.
I'm Will Anderson, and hello and thank you for watching. So we're over the World Wide Web again because, well, we're back in the same area of the world, but you've recently been in Victoria, so you were being very sensible and careful and making sure that you got your COVID results back before you ventured back out into the world. And so
that's correct.
We're down the internet today, which means that Podcast Mike is also on the call today. And I hesitate to say anything about Podcast Mike because, firstly, as we're recording this, there's been about 11 cases, overnight in Melbourne of COVID. So there is a chance that the people of Melbourne are about to go into a little bit more extended lockdown than they thought they were going to be in. And I am very cognizant of the fact that Podcast Mike is one of those people. But I think he's brought some fine fashion to the table today.
Well, my question is, do you think this is deliberate? Like, if you look at what Podcast Mike was wearing and then you look at his background, do you think it's deliberate? Like, he's colour coordinated with his environment.
It was my first observation as well because last week we went on a bit of a rant and I didn't even get to the fact that Podcast Mike counted us down and said something like 3, 2, 1, go or begin? Begin. 3, 2, 1, begin. That's what he said. And my whole point was, no, after one, we begin. You don't need to say begin. But today, 3, 2, 1, and then a thumbs up. And I'm staring at him in that sort of deep, rich blue hoodie with this kind of lighter blue wall in the background. It felt very modern. It felt very hip. I felt like I'd walked in something that I didn't know whether it was like a coffee shop or an art gallery. There was just something kind of minimalist and cool and striking about the whole thing. Did you get the same feeling?
Yeah, it's like if you went to the NGV and there was like a video installation.
Yeah.
And hey, let's say it's a video installation about isolation, what it's like being in Melbourne, and it was just a guy in a room surrounded by blue, because you could read into that lots of different things. Right. Blue being, the colour of depression, blue also being beyond in blue. These modern times, beyond blue, but also like, Mike's, a tech guy. And so you could like his chroma key, you could sort of change his environment. Maybe that's what the installation would be. He's wearing a blue hoodie, he's against a blue background. So in the installation, you can go up and select, you want to rescue this guy from his isolation. So you can put him anywhere. You can take him to Maui. You can put him on top of Everest. Well, although having said that, if he's wearing a blue hoodie, he'd just be a floating head in any of
I was just going to say, you can put his floating head on top of Mount Everest.
Game of Thrones style, digitally put his head on a pike to warn other people not to try and climb Everest. I mean, how many times do we have to go through this?
It looked hip. It looked striking. He looked like a startup tech genius. That's what it looked like to me. Like, he had this sort of like blue hoodie, very much your sort of tech colors, this like, brick / painted background. It was very... If I walked into somewhere and I was like, hey, I've lost all these computer files, I just don't know how to get them off my phone, and the dude looked like him and had an office like that, I'd be like, this guy will be able to find my files.
Yeah, he's got the Apple Store genius look going on.
Yeah.
It's like, hey man, I'm an expert, but all my brain power goes into solving your problems, not what I'm going to wear. It's the Einstein factor. I'm so glad we've revived this trope of talking about Podcast Mike to warm ourselves up for an episode.
I missed it. I don't think the listeners missed it because they can't see him, so don't get the amusement out of it that the two of us do. But I hope that our words paint pictures.
Yeah, the theatre of the mind. Let me give you some more theatre of the mind for the listeners out there. I've finally, in our pursuit of being handy-jacked, I've been doing some more work around the house. As avid listeners of the show know, I've just had a new deck put down. I want to oil my deck. which has been problematic when I'm going to Bunnings to let them know what I need to do. But prior to oiling my deck, I've had to clean my deck because it's a filthy deck.
Right. It's such a dirty deck.
It's a dirty
deck. I am going to oil you. I'm going to oil you good, you dirty deck.
It's got, little just mildew spots and stuff like that. And so what
I've
been
told...
deck. Well, I've got a spotty deck. What I've been told by Gemma is that, I need to do a thorough clean because I'm the kind of guy when the job is 70% done, I'm like, good enough, good enough. So I've been scrubbing my deck. I've been rubbing soap and stuff on my deck and cleaning up all the kind of mildew spots and stained wood and stuff. And I thought it was actually looking pretty good. But Jem took one look at it and said, no, this needs to be pristine. Before you oil your deck, I want this to be pristine. So I've made numerous trips back and forth to the hardware store. What I've realized, though, Will, is that I've been doing my handy jacked workouts in gym gear because I don't have work gear. Like I don't have overalls or, any of that kind of stuff. The closest I have to, physical labor clothing is gym gear. But on Friday when I was soaping up the deck to give it a good scrub, I fucking went ass over tit. Like who'd have thought that you cover hardwood in soap and then walk around in rubber sneakers, you might go flying. Like it was actually pretty scary. I came off the top of the deck and landed with my spine on the edge of the top part as I hit the ground below. And I was like, Jesus Christ, like I could have popped a shoulder out. I could have smashed my back. So
if you're lucky, you might not have ever walked again. And it would have been because
it could have been.
Gemma wasn't happy with your 70% clean deck.
Well, look, this is the other thing too, is I don't think I'm colorblind. But I think I have an issue differentiating shades of colours. Like I can't often tell the difference between things like orange, pink, purple. Like I get that they're
different. Sounds like you're
colourblind,
to be honest, from what you're saying.
No, because I read up on it because apparently colourblind is like a more distinct if you can't tell the difference between red and blue.
No, I know.
I think I know the general difference of like, what are they called? Primary colors. I can identify a primary color. Like Iona has a lot of toys that are all in primary colors. And so when I sit down with Iona and we go through her books, I'm pretty good at picking the colors and I get a cookie. But it's more when I'm looking at kind of, shades of a color. There's subtle differences between sort of like, lavender and purple and pink and coral and all this kind of shit. Like it's either I can't differentiate or I just don't have the vocabulary for it. And looking at my dirty deck, there was a similar issue in that I thought it was done. But Jem comes out and Jem, she trained as an artist, she's a director. Her eye is highly honed. She was like, no, look at that. Like that's a dark patch there. That doesn't match that. That's dirty. That's a different spot. And I honestly was looking at the deck going, yeah, but like it's not a huge difference. Like it's not standing out to me. Like I know Amy, she's very sensitive to smell, right? She can detect like an odor from 50 feet away. She's acutely aware. I think
50 years away, like historical things before you were born.
Right. Someone farted in this room 27 years ago. I can tell.
When you were born, it smelled disgusting.
I can smell the amniotic. What's the word? Amniotic. I can't even fucking say the word.
I'm going to lock in. You don't have the vocabulary to explain it.
Yeah. Correct. So I'm looking at the deck, and I'm like, I don't know. All right, I'll just take your word for it.
Yeah.
So I needed to go and get some safety equipment or clothes that were a bit less prone to having me slip over. And so I went and got myself some work boots.
Yeah, love it.
And here's the thing.
That's how it starts.
Here's the thing.
That's how it starts, at the boots.
Well, this is where I'm coming to realize, like, this is probably not a new revelation, but I'm starting to realize, like, hardware stores are just toy stores for grown men. Like, that's what it's all about, isn't it? Like, it's all about getting, like, accessories. So, you know, when you're a kid, you get the Castle Grayskull, and then you've got to buy the accessories because you want this bit and that bit, and you want to extend it over here, and then you need to get all the parts that go in here. You know, so I get my Ryobi hedge trimmer, and it's like, well, I should probably get a Ryobi lawnmower as well because they use the same battery. And then it's like, well, then I'll need a leaf blower as well to clean all that up. And then I'm like, oh, okay, but...
Then you're like, you know what? I feel like I'm a Ryobi guy. I feel like I should
totally
get a Ryobi hat and I should get a Ryobi sticker for my car, which is now called the Ryobi Mobile.
That's what I'm like. I'm going to travel to Japan and visit Ryobi. I don't know if it's a real place, but I'm assuming it's Japanese. Is Ryobi
First place I go, I am packing my chainsaw and my hedge trimmer, and I am going to Ryobi, Japan, which I assume is a place.
So that's one part of the toy store. You got all the toys. You got all the remote controlled toys, and you got you know, I've got this high power hose, which is now my new favorite tool because it's like the best water pistol I've ever had. In the last 3 days, I've cleaned the car, I've high pressure cleaned the driveway, I've cleaned all the moss off the house, I've high pressured the deck. Now I'm just like asking Gemma, is there anything you need blasted with this high pressure hose? Because it's so much fun. It's like this. I had a super soaker when I was a kid, but this is even better. Like, they should give kids high pressure hoses. Imagine the water fights as a kid if you could just like turbo blast each other in the backyard.
It's a super soaker. Like have I turned myself off?
You've muted yourself, as you tend to do.
Sometimes when I look things up, it mutes. I'm not sure why that is. But anyway, here's what I was going to say is like I've been doing some burning off, and my little burn off pile has become like the eternal flame because it's been perfect conditions for the fire to just keep burning at a low rate, low wind. It's kind of like not rainy, but it's kind of damp in the air, so everything's damp around. Like, it's really safe conditions to be doing some burning off. So I've just been keeping this. But part of it is, the other day, I was literally going around the garden and I was going beyond where I needed to go to find stuff to put on the fire. Like, I'd actually run out of putting the stuff that was in the garden on the fire that needed to go on the fire. I was roaming the neighbourhood trying to find other things I could burn.
So pyromania, is that what we're saying?
Slippery slope is all I would say. Gateway drug.
But it's the same thing, right? It's the same mentality you had as a 12-year-old when you loved to burn things, you know, with a magnifying glass or a lighter or whatever. And now it's like we're adults and, you know, you've got money to spend and you've got like a house that your parents can't tell you not to smash shit up in. And you're like, I'm just going to go out and burn shit. Or I'm going to blast things with my high-powered hose. So I'm in Bunnings and like you've got all the toys and it's like, oh, where's the costume department? I'm going to dress up like Batman because that's the next stage now, right? Like I've got all the toys and now I need to dress up. And so going down the aisle of where all the safety clothes are, I start accessorizing. I'm like, well, what's going to look good? You know, I'm not even really thinking about, well, what's got the steel toe cap and all that kind of stuff. I'm like, well, so there are these, have you seen these things? They're like, they look like sneakers, but they're sneakers to stop you being electrocuted. They don't conduct electricity or something. They look like just a normal running shoe, but there's some kind of insulation in them. So they're shockproof. And so I'm looking at this and they look awesome. They're these cool, like all black sneakers with a chunky heel. And I'm like, I don't really need that. I need something with grip, you know, maybe something that's going to be waterproof, especially if I'm going to be scrubbing my deck. So do I really need this? And I'm like, maybe I can find a reason to buy these shoes. Maybe I can start doing some more electrical work around the house and then I can justify.
But then the mistake you're going to make is that you'll wear those shoes into your new training program, which relies on you being shocked and it won't work on you. They're like, are you wearing shock-proof shoes?
Well, we'll get to this a little bit later, a bit of a pre-sizzle. We have had a listener, an expert in the field, write in with their take on EMS training. And was it EMS or EMT? EMS training. EMS, which leads to you ordering an EMT.
Can I give you a little bit of history of the Ryobi company? So,
yeah, let's do it.
Ryobi...
Sorry, just before you go on, Ryobi or Ryobi? I say Okay. You're saying Rye.
Here we go. Ryobi.
What?
Well, the you know when they give you the English that's meant to make it easier to pronounce? I don't. Yeah. I'm not. It turns out I'm not across all the symbols of what they mean because it's very hard for me from the pronunciation they have here for me to tell you whether it's Ryobi or Ryobi or something in between.
Well, you just sit with you're comfortable with, and I'm sure we'll get letters.
Ryobi Caesar Kusho Company was founded in 1943 with the sale of die-cast products commencing a year later. In 61, blah, 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 blah. Power tools. The Ryobi Tools brand in North America, Europe, Australia, and New Zealand is licensed by Tectonic Industries of Hong Kong. So actually, you don't need to go and visit Japan. You just need to pop over to Hong Kong to visit where this stuff's going on. One World Technologies. Oh, that's an ominous, ominous sounding company, isn't it?
I believe that is because it's interesting. Their whole selling point at the moment, Ryobi, is the power of one. The idea being that they have this one powerful battery that you can interchange. It's a genius idea because it means once you've bought one tool, you then want to buy the rest because you can use the same battery.
Okay, here's a couple of things that have just come up. Ryobi is how it's pronounced. Podcast Mike has put that up on the little message window. And it says, it's Ryobi, source, I can read Japanese.
Podcast Mike can read Japanese.
Well, I can't read Japanese. So, yes, I'm assuming Podcast Mike can read Japanese. Did you know until this day that he could read Japanese?
No, I didn't. Mike, can you also speak Japanese, and to what level?
I mean, I like the idea that he can't speak a word of it. He can just read it.
What a curse.
I can speak some Japanese, but not much.
Okay. Right. All right. Did you study it in high school?
This is great. This is what the podcast is now. We're not just describing what he's wearing. We're literally just asking him questions
and waiting for him to type it up.
Yes.
Okay, cool. All right. Understood. And now I can read hiragana and katakana.
The two main alphabets.
Okay. There's two alphabets in Japan.
I did know that.
Well, one's not good enough? You did know that?
Yeah. Well, I did Japanese at high school as well, but all I remember is Ishni, Sanshi, Go, Roku, Nana. No, don't even remember that. Don't even remember how to count to 10.
Well, Mike's saying there's actually three alphabets.
There's hiragana, katakana, and English. Kanji. Oh, of course, kanji. Yeah. All right. Well, there you go.
Aren't kanji the giant monsters? Isn't that, what are they called? The in the movies and stuff, the kiriju or something. Kaiju.
I mean, it's a terrible mistake to make if you're in charge of one or the other. Either way, you're in a lot of trouble when somebody comes down and realizes that you've flipped them around.
So give me some more history of Ryobi. When did they...
It turns out that Ryobi isn't even Ryobi. It's just branded Ryobi, and it's made by One World Technologies. And
I seem to remember the ad campaign in the 80s was a samurai. It was a cool ad. It was like a samurai, a samurai in shadows, slicing things with his sword, and it's like Ryobi. I was like, oh yeah, man, I want that. I want to be a garden samurai. I want to be a household samurai, and I feel like I am. How loyal do you get to brands? I mean, I know we've talked before that you once felt such a loyalty to The Simpsons that you avoided watching South Park for a while because you're like, no, I'm a Simpsons guy. When you buy a car or a brand of clothing, do you become loyal to that, or is it more than just the branding? It's like, well, I've got to like it, and it's got to fit my body, or it's got to fit my lifestyle.
Well, somewhere in between those two things, I think, is where I've settled, which is I tend to find something that I like, and then I just continue to buy that product forever. Yeah. So it's less about the idea of going, if I'd found a pair of Adidas shoes or a pair of whatever it is, runners that really suited my feet and that I liked, I'd continue to buy that sort of runners for the rest of my life. For me, it's Nikes. I look the other way on, all the horrible things that Nike's done as a company because, their shoes, for whatever reason, just are very comfortable, sneakers that fit my feet and that I enjoy wearing. And so whenever I just I don't even look at other brands of shoes. When I go to buy a new pair of runners, I just go what black Nikes do you have?
I feel like I avoided Nike for so long, probably for less Not for the reasons you have. I'd have less integrity than you, more just because I was like, it's such an oversold brand. It's so mainstream, man. If I'm going to get a sneaker, it's not going to be a Nike. And then I caved in about 3 or 4 years ago and started wearing them like, oh my God, these shoes are so comfortable. They're so great. Although, having said that, I've been weaned off them by the power of the rock, as we've discussed. I'm buying Under Armour now, and I think they're pretty good. I think their shoes are pretty comfortable and pretty good, especially the Rock's Project Rock range.
Oh, man, if I found like, that's how easy it would be for me to change my life though. Like I would just go, if I wore a pair of those shoes and I really like them, I'd just be like, okay, well, this is the shoe that I'm going to wear for the rest of my life.
I find that sometimes, like, we bought a new car about 6 months ago, that I do have a tendency to kind of be brand loyal just based on, okay, so I'm in this car now, let me learn about that. Or, with the Wiggles, like Iona loves the Wiggles now, so I tend to just like investigate the Wiggles and find out as much as I can about that thing. But I don't know necessarily like if we got a new car or if Iona will eventually move on from the Wiggles, if suddenly I'm like, oh, wait a minute, no, we should stick with this. Like, we're not fly-by-nighters. I think once something's in my life, I like to kind of know what it is and learn as much about it as I can. But then once it's gone, I don't really have any loyalty.
When it comes to cars, because cars is a good example of whether you do or you don't, I think. And I started like I did. My first 2 cars were Holden Barinas. Hello, ladies. When I traded out of my first Barina, I traded into a nicer version of the car that I was already driving. Wow. Like just the more modern version of the car.
You're such a tall, lanky dude though. Like even before your hips, that must have been an uncomfortable drive.
I didn't have a lot of money. It was a really economical car, and it was reliable. And my first car was like, because I was one of those kids who, like our parents would pay us for working on the farm once we got to the age you could pay kids to work on the farm. So our part-time job was doing farm work. And it meant that because they have to pay you properly and because you're a farm kid and you do actually end up like doing a whole bunch of hours, is by the time you're 18, you normally had, and so our parents would get us to try to aim for saving enough money to buy a car. So whatever money you'd saved by the time that you got to 18, you could spend on your first car. And I had about, I think $7,000 or $8,000. So like a decent amount of money, and bought like a Barina that probably somebody had for like 6 years or 7 years. So it wasn't like a new car, but it wasn't like an old car. Yeah. And it was such a good car that when I because I was still, just out of uni and stuff, still didn't have a lot of money. I just traded up to another Barina. But after that, I drove a CR5. Is that a Honda? I don't even know what brand that car it was. Like whatever Mazda. Is that what it is? Anyway, whatever it was. We've had a Mustang. We got a Holden Ute. I drive an Audi at the moment, which is a very nice car, I will say.
Well, you've got to a stage though where you have your functional car and then you have your fun car, right, like your weekend car,
yes,
right?
That's true. Yes. We have our like daily driver, and then the one that's always in the mechanics.
Yay. I seem to remember my first car, like I just used to drive mum's car because it was just the 2 of us. There was no other demands on it. And then when I moved to Sydney, I bought it off her. I think I stiffed her on the deal. I think I gave her 50% up front, promised to give her the other 50%. And then the car died on a drive from Melbourne to Sydney, and mechanic bought it off me for like $700. I think I gave mum like, not even the majority of that $700, and said, yeah, the other money's owing, and just like, well, I'll just wait her out. She's much older than me. I'll see her. And it worked. Now, Will, we've had a listener link us to an article that is of great interest to both you and I. We're always worried about where AI is going and what it's doing. This is from the Business Insider Australia. The headline is "Rogue Killer Drone Hunted Down a Human Target Without Being Instructed to," a UN report says. This is from Joshua Zitzer. Okay, any thoughts on that headline?
What's the publication?
The Business Insider Australia.
Okay, I think that's a legitimate source.
Well, this is the thing, because I got sent this link, or we got sent this link, and I was like, that headline because you read something like that and then you find out, yeah, but it wasn't a real killing. It was just some. But I've read this article and it seems like this is a real thing. So let's delve in, shall we? So the bullet points are: a deadly drone hunted down a human target without being instructed to, according to a UN report. The incident took place in Libya last year, and experts are sounding the alarm about the lack of regulation around killer robots. Actually, hang on.
Okay, so firstly, here's what I'm going to say. My immediate reaction is, I'm surprised it's taken this long. That's the truth. I'm not surprised by the fact that it's happened in any way. And experts are suddenly thinking that perhaps we need to be regulating this a little bit more strictly than we have. Well, guess what? Idiots have been saying that for 10 years. Complete morons and dickheads like me have been saying that exact same thing. So it turns out I was a decade before. There is a fine line between being a complete idiot and being 10 years ahead of a fucking expert.
Yeah. I'm a bit suspicious now about this article because their source that they've written this from is the Daily Star, which I don't really know much about. But that
less reputable.
Okay. Let's read it anyway.
Sounds like something they've made up for a comic book adaptation where they couldn't get the rights to the Daily Planet.
Okay, so the article begins. A lethal weaponized drone hunted down a human target without being told to for the first time, according to UN report seen by the New Scientist. Okay, well, they're linked to New Scientist. That's another reputable publication.
Okay, New Scientist, we're back.
Yeah.
This has been a roller coaster.
Oscillating between legitimate publications and stuff Rupert Murdoch has on his fourth tier. Okay, the March 2020 incident saw Kargu-2 quadcopter autonomously attack a human during a conflict between Libyan government forces and a breakaway military faction.
Just for a start, if you call something Kargu-2 quadcopter,
scary.
It just sounds like an action movie sequel, doesn't it?
Kargu-2. Yeah. It sounds like one of those kind of like, films from India or Thailand or something. It's one of those like really bloodthirsty action films. And you just see the poster as like just like a decapitated head, Kargu-2. Okay, so it was built in Turkey. It's the Turkish-built Kargu-2. It's a deadly attack drone designed for asymmetric warfare and anti-terrorist operations. What does asymmetric warfare mean? Asymmetric. I mean, that means or does it? Asymmetric means non-linear, right? Like
Okay, have I muted myself again?
No, I can hear you.
I've managed to not do that. That's good.
No, Grandpa, you're still here.
Okay, so asymmetric warfare, according to Wikipedia, is defined as war between belligerents whose relative military power differs significantly or whose strategy or tactics differ significantly. Okay,
so that's
right.
for fighting terrorists.
Typically a war between a standing professional army and an insurgency or resistance movement militia.
Yeah, okay. So it's crushing uprisings. This sounds incredibly ominous.
Yeah. It's great. This is a Turkish not delight.
Okay, so it was designed for asymmetric warfare and anti-terrorist operations. It targeted one of Haftar's soldiers while he tried to retreat, according to the paper. The drone, which can be directed to detonate on impact, was operating in a highly effective autonomous mode that required no human controller, the New York Post said. And highly effective is in quotes.
It was a highly effective
murder.
So effective. They totally murdered him.
Fucking hell. The lethal autonomous weapon systems were programmed to attack targets without requiring data connectivity between the operator and the munition. In effect, a true fire, forget and find capability, the report from the UN Security Council's panel of experts on Libya said. Okay, so that's awesome. Basically, they're just deferring any kind of judgment to the machine. Just find and kill. This is likely the first time drones have attacked humans without instructions to do so. Zach Kellenborn, a national security consultant who specialises in unmanned systems and drones,
now, hang
confirmed
on.
in the report.
Can you just go over that quote again, please?
The lethal autonomous weapon systems were programmed to attack targets without requiring data connectivity between the operator and the munition. In effect, a true fire, forget and find capability. Forget and find. Isn't it find, fire, forget? Have they got the order of that wrong? You find the target, you fire, you forget about it, not fire, forget, and then find.
No, I think they
fire first,
find, and then they fucking forget about it. They let the AI robot do its thing, and it fucking
fires,
does the killing. It fires.
This is likely the first time drones have attacked humans without instructions, Zach Kellerborn, a national security consultant who specialises in unmanned systems drones, confirmed in the report. Kellenborn, however, has concerns about the future of autonomous drones. How brittle is the object recognition system, he said. How often does it misidentify targets?
Right. Good questions that we should have asked a decade ago, I imagine, when we were developing this technology rather than now.
Jack Watling, a researcher on land warfare at the Royal United Services Institute, told New Scientist that this incident demonstrates the urgent and important need to discuss the potential regulation of autonomous weapons. Genie's out of the bottle, mate. Time for discussion is over.
Don't wait until the killer robots are autonomous before we have a conversation about whether they should be autonomous.
Human Rights Watch has called for an end to so-called killer robots and is campaigning for a preemptive ban on the development, production and use of fully autonomous weapons, according to a report by the charity. How do you reckon?
Yeah, but it's already not a preemptive. It's emptive.
Yeah.
The pre is gone. The AI has already killed somebody without being asked to kill somebody. There is no preemptive now. It's just emptive. We need to get on the emptive immediately.
The thing too is that I think we all have in our minds, the sort of Terminator principle, this idea that you will have an opportunity to either fight back or negotiate or get past this thing.
No,
it's just going to detonate from a distance. Like you won't even fucking see it coming.
Welcome to asymmetric warfare, bitch.
Yeah. Like there's absolutely we have no chance against these things.
None. Absolutely none. If they can fire from in the air, target people, and then fire at you, we're fucked.
What about, all right, so let's just say you get info, you get intel, let's use military speak, you get intel that you have been targeted for deletion or termination, whatever they're going to call it, right? So you know that at some stage a drone, let's use the same example, this Cargill, whatever its name is, Cargill 2 is coming to get you. What do you do? Where do you go? I mean, you have to assume they have all your information. So first thing you do is destroy like any GPS systems you have, right? Your phone, your car, any of that kind of stuff. And then you get moving. Or do you stay still? I mean, do you fucking just bury yourself in the ground and hope it doesn't find you?
Tempted to go with option B. I mean, just do it. Let's not make it any harder than it needs to be. Let's get it over quickly. And I'm not turning off my phone GPS. So I'm just going to spend the last moments online. May as well, No, I guess, yes, immediately you turn off all your tracking. So anything that could possibly track you. And then you find somewhere that is not your primary address that you can hide. And then I imagine what I would do is try to stay as absolutely still as possible in order to, because I can't run from it.
Yeah.
I can't get away from it in that fashion. So I would just hope that that drone needs to be deployed for somebody more important after a while.
Well, realistically, just say you get 12 hours notice. So, the strike's going to happen in 12 hours. Realistically, where do you think you could go that's going to protect you? Like I'm assuming you want to get underground, is that right? You want to get sort of somewhere where like an airborne attack is going to be less effective?
So I'd have to take speaking of cars, can't take the new car. It's full of computer systems that it'd be easier to track. But here's the advantage of having an unreliable old car is that if it wasn't at the mechanics at the time I find out about this, you have some sort of analog technology that you can use to sort of get it as far away as possible at least. So I have 12 hours notice. Here's what I think I would do. I would drive my car as far as I could away from where I was eventually going to end up, allowing me time to get back to where I was going to end up. So I'm using the analog car, the Ute, as some sort of distraction for them when they're initially trying to pick up clues of where I might be. So I drive that car as far away as the rest of the time to walk back to where I'm going to hide is going to take. But I am actually going to hide quite near where I actually live because there are some great sort of waterfalls and caves and stuff around here. I know the area. I think it would be good for protection. Luckily, there's been a lot of local people tearing down 5G towers in the area. It's very hard to get reception on phones. I assume drones will be the exact same thing. So I get in one of these sort of waterfall caves, but I still am in an area where maybe I can sneak out, and there's lots of farms around here, lots of avocado farms.
Yeah.
I'd still eat quite well. Macadamias and avocados. I'd be subsisting on a diet of macadamias, magic mushrooms and avocados, living in a waterfall cave. To be honest, so far, it sounds better than the life I'm currently living.
So who do you tell? I mean, obviously you've got to let Amy know because she needs to get out of there as well. She's not the primary
Can't
target.
tell anyone.
Can't tell anyone. Huh?
Can't tell anyone. Just have to go. No, yeah, of course. No, I've got to tell Amy.
Anyone who's going to be near the house or likely to come to the house or lives in the house, you have to tell them. Do you tell me?
Of course.
Because you're going to need someone to bring you supplies at some point. I know you're assuming you're going to live off avocados and macadamias, but you're going to need drinking water. You're going to need clothes. So you need someone, right? But how do you contact them?
You can drink from the waterfall. You can bathe in the waterfall. You can drink from the waterfall.
You'll get a stomach parasite in the first bloody drink and then have diarrhea for the next 2 weeks.
Well, give me something to do while I'm hiding in my cave.
So you wouldn't try and make contact with someone like me or like a close friend or relative to just say, hey, this is the deal. I can't tell you too much, but I'm out of here. I'll let you. You'll get a signal. Just bring blankets, supplies, to this waterfall, this cave.
Well, I'm assuming I'm not the first person targeted, right? I'm assuming that I can't imagine that if AI takes over, apart from the fact that I was a person on the record early rallying against them, maybe that's one of their early tests. They just trawl through old podcasts and see who's been bad-mouthing them publicly and just take them out one by one. So maybe I am up the top of the list. But let's say I have 12 hours notice. I've changed my plan a little bit. Less important is the distraction of the car. More important now is getting supplies into my cave. So what I've got to do is particularly books and toiletries and those sort of things, I've got to get them to the cave. So I've got to load up the ute.
Yep.
I've got to get all that shit down to the cave, hide that in the cave, then drive a bit away, get back to the cave, get into reading and shitting.
Reading and shitting. What about, do you think there's any chance that you might forego your vegetarianism for survival?
No, I think it'd be more important to be a vegetarian. Because the local lands are plentiful when it comes to, I might have to become, I have some money, so hopefully I could, just at least take some cash and stuff, with me, or, some valuables, because near where I'm thinking, near these waterfalls and caves, there's, local farms around. People do grow their own produce. So I think there'd probably be some night raids, but I wouldn't want to steal people's stuff. So I'd like to, in their honesty box out the front of their garden, I'd still like to leave some money or whatever,
There are, in this area, there are a lot of farmers who have produce out on, there is that honor system where the produce out on the road. So you could definitely, because do you eat eggs? I can't remember.
Yep, eat eggs.
All right, so that's fine. You get protein. There's lots of fruit and vegetables in market stalls that you could get to because you're going to avoid
nuts, heaps of nuts.
Populated areas, aren't you? There's no chance of you heading into any town or anything like that because CCTV, you might get spotted. Would you change your appearance at all? Are you growing a beard, cutting your hair, doing anything like that so they can't do facial recognition?
I don't think it's going to help me to go. I'm not known for having a beard. So I think that's probably your best option. But whether I could grow a beard, I really can't. You know what I mean?
Imagine if that's the deciding factor in you living or dying is your prepubescent facial hair, your wispy little mustache and patchy beard.
It would be my major concern. Is the fact that I wouldn't be able to grow an effective enough beard. But yeah, I would definitely go long hair, long beard. Also sort of fits in with some of the vibe of the people living up in the hills. So if people see somebody a figure late at night with long hair and a beard, they're not immediately going to think it's me. It could be, similar sort of people living alternative lifestyles out in the country.
And do you think there is any part of you that will attempt to make contact with whoever's pursuing you, the AI, to negotiate, to try and reach truce, to sort of get out of the situation?
I'm happy. I'm happy. I'm actually, bring it on, I say. I can't wait. This sounds like an awesome life. All your responsibilities are gone. Get time to catch up on some reading. I'm eating natural. I'm growing my hair again, which I've always wanted to do, but I've never had a real excuse for it. Trying to grow a beard. Let's just see what happens. That's a good experiment.
Are you writing any material? Like, at some point, are you thinking, shit, if I actually survive this, I'm going to have like not just 1 year's show. I'm going to have a show. I'm going to have shows for the next decade.
Yeah, but I'm writing it on the walls of my cave like The Shining. Just like...
I mean, it is an interesting question. Like, even in survival situations, you know, is there room for kind of art and creativity? Like, let's just say, you know, the first 2 weeks go by and you seem to be well hidden. Like, there's been no signs from you that they've discovered where you are. So you sort of lower your guard a little bit. Do you write? Do you kind of like, you know, experiment with creativity, or is it still just like, man, I've just got to feed myself and make sure I don't get IBS?
You know what would be amazing if I have like, again, because everything's got to be analog technology, but I've got like a cassette tape player, cassette tape recorder, you know, with like a microphone.
Yep.
And
you start podcasting.
Every week I make a little cassette tape and I just leave it like in a different place each time where you go and discover it, like leave you a series of clues. And then you have a listen to that. You record your end of the conversation and Podcast Mike like edits it together and we still do the podcast.
Okay. So, all right. But 2 weeks prior to that, you've left without any like notification. I don't know anything about where you've gone. You've just disappeared. So you think it's safe to make contact with me to leave me this cassette tape? How do you get it to me? Like, what? How do you communicate to me that it's you and that this is what's going on without revealing where you're hiding out?
So
it's hard, isn't it?
Well, I don't need you to. I mean, yeah. How do I get it to somewhere that's?
Because they're going to be monitoring all your close contacts, right? So they've got 340 episodes of this fucking show. So they've analysed our dynamics and stuff, and like, this dude. We've got a strong feeling like the computers are talking. They're like, you know, we've run algorithms and this guy cannot stop podcasting. Like, clearly he does one with his mate. He does one on his own. They have almost 1,000 episodes of podcasts. So we know that's the most high likelihood. So we monitor his podcast partner.
Yeah, but the one thing that you've got that is going to be working in opposition of the way that these algorithms operate, see, they take all the data and then they extrapolate on that data of what the most likely scenario will be, right? You know, they just go, with the data we have, here's the next logical step that somebody, you know, using, you know, these factors would take. But as we've learned from you over the years, your thinking is best described as counterintuitive. Like, there hasn't been a business idea we've ever brought up that you haven't come up with a caveat that meant that it's gone from a money-making to a money-losing proposition. And I think this is now our advantage because you don't think like a computer. You think like...
Crazy like a fox.
Whatever the logical thing is, I've just got to think of... We've got to Costanza it. I've got to at all times think of what the opposite of the logical thing to do is. Do that and you will be the only person who knows. Like, you'll just find yourself there. You'll just open up something and be like, this is a cassette tape.
Well, I was noticing when I was driving around today, I took Iona to daycare. And then generally what I do is I take Iona to daycare. There's a gym on the way home. I'll stop there and do some exercise and then come home. And I've obviously repeated this pattern enough that my Google Maps knows this because it now starts telling me how long it is going to be to my next destination. Like, it used to be, this is how long it's going to take you to get home, but now it's realized, but he generally goes to this address after he goes to this address. So now that algorithm is mapped out. So you've got to find a way to get my attention by not going to one of the usual places that you know that I visit. Can't be Bunnings, can't be the gym, can't be my local cafe, can't be my local supermarket. How do you contact me? Where are you leaving this note or this cassette? It's hard.
It is hard. You know what? I can't think about it on the spot right now, but the first 4 or 5 weeks when I'm in the cave, that's plenty of time to come up with a plan. Like, I'm going to have some good thinking time while I'm hiding because I'm not contacting you the next week. I've got to spend like a month in the cave and I'm going to need some things to, you know, occupy my mind. One of them is going to be coming up with how I get this cassette to you. Maybe it's about separating the cassette and the clue, right?
Yeah.
So I can drop a clue at one of the places that I know you're going to be, but the cassette has to be at the complete opposite. So it has to be like at a Home Hardware rather than a Bunnings. Like, you know, the one time you decide you're not going to go to Bunnings because of some sort of factor, you end up at Home Hardware. That's where it's going to be.
Well, if we were taking it from now, so it's 12 hours from now, you have to escape 12 hours from recording this podcast. You know that I'm in the midst of scrubbing my dirty deck. Mm-hmm. So if you could somehow get like a tape or something to Bunnings in that 12 hours before you have to take off in your analog vehicle, there is a good chance that I will go to Bunnings in the next couple of weeks to get, you know, timber oil or, you know, like some work boots or something like that. So if you can leave something on the shelves, there's a good chance. I mean, you're taking a risk, but there's a good chance that I might find it.
I just don't know how I get it in there. That's the problem. Like, it's almost got to be outside because I can't really go anywhere where there's cameras. You know, so I've got to keep away from...
But if you know that you've got 12 hours, so, you know, if you do it in the first hour, you've still got 11 hours to disappear. It doesn't matter if they know
but they know that I was at Bunnings. Why was there at Bunnings? And then they're looking at Bunnings for clues or whatever when they go back and have a look at this information. They suddenly identify you. We're all in this together way too early at this point. I need some distance between my old life and my new life to get away from things. I don't need them to know that I'm still in the area or that I'm still communicating with you.
Well, okay.
I mean, I guess after the first podcast goes up, they'll know I'm still communicating with you.
How about we throw it out to the listeners? If you can think of a way after 3 weeks of isolation that Will can get in contact with me to get me this cassette tape so we can keep doing the podcast, but in a way that wouldn't be detectable by AI, email us, send us a message, go to tofop.com and send us a message on how that would be done. And while you're at the website, why don't you check out some of our other great podcasts like Willosophy. Who's on Willosophy this week, Will?
So Andrew Mccarthy, who is a famous actor from the 80s. Everybody knows who Andrew Mccarthy is. And Akech, now I'm going to say her name wrong, but she's a incredible AFLW player with an Akech Mccarthy. She is, I don't think I got that entirely correct, which I fucking hate, but incredible AFLW player with an incredible backstory of being a refugee and making it to Australia, and it's a really cool episode. So I would say check that out.
I listened to the Andrew McCarthy episode, and I've got to say, it's so great. He is amazing, but the sheer delight in which you both talk about Weekend at Bernie's is absolutely worth listening to, because you go in quite soft because you don't know what his reaction or his attitude is going to be about it, and you sort of like, you just, you know, gentle go in, but then as soon as he gives you the green light, the enthusiasm that pours out of you, it's absolutely infectious. It's such a great chat.
I mean, that moment where I suggested when he dies that he should get people to drag his corpse around, he reacted to that as if, I mean, maybe it's not the first time he's heard somebody make that sort of joke, but he reacted like it was. And that was a genuinely special moment.
We've also got an AFL podcast called Two Guys, One Cup. It's more AFL adjacent. It's a bit like this show. We basically use football as a framework to talk about the usual bullshit. And it's a very interesting season for us because my team is doing terribly, but Will's team is doing great. So it's like the original Odd Couple.
And yeah, I mean, this week it's the opposite. My team lost and Charlie's team won. So you probably won't spend the first 30 minutes of the podcast making everybody miserable.
Yeah, it was very miserable. And FOFOP this week, my guest is Katie Diamond. You might know her better as Monty Diamond. Fantastic chat with her. That is all at tofop.com. But Will, we've got some messages here from some people. This is from Stephanie. And this is the expert I was referring to earlier in the episode about EMS training. She says, "Gents, I've just listened to episode 338 about Charlie watching two dudes exercise in Melbourne and using EMS. Almost everything Will said was what I was thinking. For context, my UK job is somewhere between your versions of a physio and an exercise physiologist. I also have a master's degree in strength and conditioning and have been doing this for 10 years, which is only a touch shorter than the time I've been listening to you two. Exercise-based therapy is my jam, so I feel pretty confident in saying the guy instructing was talking absolute bollocks. What they did to you, Charlie, was a straight up gimmick. Do you feel validated, Will, or you're always quite confident in that opinion?
Well, in the same way as I was confident in the idea that sometimes AI killer robots would kill human beings without us telling them to, I was also pretty confident that this was discredited 1970s Russian propaganda.
Absolutely, we use EMS for patients during rehab, but generally we use it to help people who are at a low level to stop their muscles wasting, or to get them going after surgery, or to control pain, etc. We don't tend to use it if there's nothing wrong with you, and we definitely don't toss it on all the muscles simultaneously, because that is just ridiculous, and that is not how the body works.
That was one of the things that I thought wasn't fully thought through, because I was like, yeah, at the physio, they'll just put it in one specific area and it's about working those specific muscles. But these guys are like, yeah, but what if you just worked all your muscles at once?
Well, I mean, it kind of makes sense to me, doesn't it? Like, there's got to be some form of exercise or resistance training where you are engaging like the majority of your muscles in one movement. Like I was saying, powerlifting or weightlifting or something like that. Those guys would be engaging, their legs, their core, their arms, their shoulders. Like, there's a lot going into that.
You mean the most physically exerting thing you can possibly think of?
As is the case with most things, there is no substitute for genuine hard work performed consistently so that things stay in a... Sorry, I've got to read this again. There's no substitute for genuine hard work performed consistently so that things stay... It's a time-saving miracle, or often not. I'm sorry. Also, contrary to popular belief, muscle soreness isn't a great marker of whether you've done a good or effective workout. So your complete inability to move after the workout is not a good sign. In summary, I'm with Will. Just because something gets used in one context doesn't immediately mean it's appropriate everywhere. And if a stranger asks you to take off your underwear and wear something other people have been rubbing their sweaty genitals over, just say no. Although I hear there's big bucks in that in certain circles. No personal experience, I should add. I love your work, Steph. All right.
Thanks, Steph.
Well, we haven't vetted Steph, but I'm happy to take her opinion as being valid.
I love that you think we should vet Steph as opposed to these shysters that you just rolled into, because you were like, well, I saw some couple of Kiwis blokes doing it.
We're getting a lot of bot emails at the moment.
Oh, yeah.
This one, I cannot make head nor tail of what this bot is asking us to do. So I'll just read it to you. This is from the bot called Zoe. Hi, how are you doing? I will make it simple and short.
Okay,
I want to contribute an amazing guest post to your website. Mm-hmm. For that, we just need 3 steps. I will send you some new topic ideas that will be tech-oriented and in trend too. Number 2, you'll have to choose one of those. Number 3, I will then send high-quality article on that chosen topic for you to publish on your website, with a one do follow link to my site. Let me know how this sounds. Shall we start with step 1? Best Zoe.
No.
What the
Dear
fuck
Zoe,
are we?
No.
What? I don't understand a word of that. What is this bot trying to achieve?
I think that Zoe, the bot, I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know actually what they're absolutely trying to achieve, but let's...
A tech-oriented article.
Okay, so I imagine it's some sort of algorithm that can just write an article about any topic, right? So you send them back some topics, it writes an article, you post the article on our website, and then it links through to Zoe the bot's website, which drives more traffic and ads and gets other people to do it. I don't know what the end goal is, making money for somebody, I assume, or harvesting information or infecting your computer with some sort of virus so that they can change all your passwords and strip out your credit card details, I assume.
Well, there's no
I
link.
apologise, Zoe, if you are actually a legitimate business that just wants to post your article about technology on our page.
Well, there's a second robot wrote into us. This robot calls himself Maurice. Hello. It is with sad regret to inform you that bestlocaldata.com is shutting down. We have made all our databases for sale for a once-off price. Visit our website to get the best bargain of your life. bestlocaldata.com. Regards, Maurice. Tempted?
Well, I'm glad that Maurice let us know. I mean, how would we have felt if we'd needed to go to, what was the name of their business again?
bestlocaldata.com.
Bestlocaldata.com. What do you think the best... Don't look up the website, what do you think the bestlocaldata.com does?
I imagine it's like you're buying just bandwidth or something like that. Like, like Google, you could expand your Google Drive or
But can,
it's
what
storage.
can we, is there some sort of business that allows us to have more local data?
I guess it'd just be like like an independent internet storage website or something like that. That's not like a Google Drive or a Dropbox or something like that. But they say they're selling their entire business. Do we want to buy it? Do we want to be tech? Oh my God, maybe this is what it's all come full circle. I mean, Podcast Mike dresses like a tech whiz kid. Maybe you and I become like tech giants. They talk about the Gold Coast is going to become the next Silicon Valley. Maybe this is our future, Will. This is what TOFOP's been leading towards.
I think when they say the Gold Coast is going to be Silicon Valley, it's a different type of silicon that they're talking about. But I am actually going to the Gold Coast to do a gig. After all these times of saying the entire Gold Coast should be bulldozed into the ocean, I have relented. I'm going to Currumbin, which I have been led to believe is an incredibly beautiful place. And
awesome.
There is a local venue there, only 200 seats. I'm going to do my Will Eagle show. So if you're in the Gold Coast region, because I didn't take the show there, if you want to come and see that show, Currumbin, July 24 or something like that. But all the details are on comedy.com.au.
This is from, and I apologise if I get this wrong, Gavanch. He says, "Hey guys, hope you're both well. I just recently watched a documentary that I think would be right up your alley. Probably one of the most insane and funny docos I've ever seen. It's called Project Odessa. It's about a Russian mobster and a Miami playboy and how they eventually end up trying to buy a Russian submarine for the Cali cartel during the 80s. Have you seen Project Odessa?
I have not, no.
No, I haven't heard either. No. I might watch this on next weekend. I hope you're both doing well and enjoying living in northern New South Wales. Also, I just wanted to thank Will for the recommendation of a Girl's Guide to Dude Cinema podcast. I'm having a blast hearing their thoughts on movies I've enjoyed over the years. Good podcast, that one.
It is a really good podcast, and I was actually having a conversation about it earlier today with Chaz Licciardello, who I'm sure a lot of people who listen to this show know Chaz from his work on The Chaser and Planet America and all the brilliant things he does. And we were both talking about how big of fans that we are, and we were commiserating on the fact that our team, the Western Bulldogs, lost on Friday night. So Chaz is such a good person. Oh, mate. Like, for next time when you do another season of My Club, you've got to get Chaz on to talk about the Bulldogs. He is so good to talk about football with. Like, the same way as he approaches like everything he does for The Chaser, he's one of those guys who just knows everything about everybody, thinks about football really deeply. Yeah, he's such a good person to talk to about footy, and also favourite podcasts about, and we were both raving about that show today.
Have they done an episode on Point Break? I can't remember.
Possibly. I keep going through, like, because I've been, they asked me to go on the show and I just haven't had the opportunity to do it. And I keep seeing movies that I would have liked to do get ruled out. And I'm like, that would have been a good one. That would have been a good one.
Did you seen Army of the Dead, the Zack Snyder zombie thing on Netflix?
I tried.
It is so bad. Like, it is so bad. I mean, it's probably, maybe we can talk about it on the next podcast, but it took me about 3 viewings to get through it. But it's a complete rip-off of Aliens. I don't know if anyone's noticed that, but every single story beat, every character, they're all like, it's completely lifted from Aliens. It's like, no, I haven't read much or seen much of people going, hang on, you've just completely, in the same way that The Fast and the Furious is Point Break, Army of the Dead is Aliens, and it's but done really, really badly. He's a terrible filmmaker. I'm sorry. Like, I know there's we're probably bringing on the ire of the most toxic fanboys there are out there, but I mean, he makes really good opening titles, really good credits. That's what he should do. Just bring him in to do the credits for your movie, but don't have him try and tell a story or develop characters. It's so bad. So bad.
It's just not his strength. Like, visually, he look, it's not my style, but I can see that it is a style. Like, he has a visual style, and he clearly does some things that people like the look of, and I can understand that. Like, I like 300. It looked good. And I can see that he has a visual style, but his storytelling style is not to my tastes.
It's like he's 13 years old. Like, everything about it, like the gun worship and the buff dudes and the hot babes. And it's like, is this the first zombie movie where the zombies have abs? Like, all the zombies are ripped. It's like, how did this happen? Like, when are the zombies, like, after your body, like, after you die and your body deteriorates, I didn't realize you can get shredded. I mean, maybe that's the next thing. It's like the death workout.
From what I saw, and I haven't seen enough to even know if this is the case, but it felt to me like zombies could do everything. There was just all sorts of, like, whatever you wanted. Do you want slow ones, fast ones, rip ones, gymnastic ones? Like, we've got every sort of zombie. And that, to me, is a little bit like everything that he does, where you're just like, no, why would we just have one sort of zombies when we can have every type of zombie?
There's robot zombies. There's zombies that hibernate. Like, it's literally whatever the
zombies?
plot needs them to do. Yeah, there's robot zombies at one point. It's just garbage.
Hang on. I've got to watch this whole thing and we've got to talk about this. Okay. If there's robot zombies.
Okay, that's TOFOP for this week. I'm Charlie Clausen.
I'm Will Anderson.